all very, very much for coming on this call. It is being recorded, so we can send copies out to everyone else. I wish to offer, in the first instance, a sincere thank you to Leila Mouden and Enzyme Science for making arrangements for us to have this call today. My name is Raven. I'm the Commercial Director for Hydrovitality. I've spent 40 years in the medical clinical practice, so hydrogen's been of a great interest to me over many years. One of the great problems I've always had, though, is being able to find verifiable science and people that are able to get behind a system, because there's so many systems out there. What works and what doesn't work has always been a challenge for me. Instead of using generic sciences or generic bits of information, I've always been looking for someone that can verify things properly for me. And on this journey, I've been very, very fortunate to meet Dr. Grace Russell, who's going to be on this call talking and taking us through a presentation. But one of the things that's really important for us as Hydrovitality is that we engage with the West of England University in order to create the right information, the right science, and the right support system. And that's where Dr. Russell has come from. So we still have that relationship with the West of England University in support of what we're doing now to produce what we believe is probably one of the most potent and powerful oxyhydrogen systems in the world today. So at that point, I'm going to hand you over to Dr. Russell, but just understand that there is a Q&A button in the bottom of the screen. If you wish to ask questions along the way, just pop your question in there and they will be answered. We may get overrun with that, but we will take Q&As at the end of the call for as much as we possibly can as well. A copy of the recording, the transcription will be sent out to everybody following this, and an opportunity to engage further for information if you want it, either a brochure or a visit or demonstration, etc. And many other events that we're putting on afterwards so that practitioners can get in touch with us and get more information should they need it. So I'm very, very delighted to be working with this lady, Dr. Russell. She's a fabulous person, great fun, but probably, in my opinion, probably one of the world's leading authorities on molecular hydrogen today. So, Dr. Russell, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Raven, and thanks everyone at Enzyme Science, Celgenate and Water Fuel Engineering for inviting me here. I'm just going to share my screen with you now, and we'll start the presentation. Fab. So I've been asked here today to describe the effects of oxyhydrogen therapies on mitochondrial function and how this may benefit people suffering from chronic fatigue and post-viral syndrome. I suspect as well that many of your digestive order and inflammation clients are also likely to be reporting unrelenting fatigue, in spite of the excellent work you guys are already doing. And these people are possibly not willing to take an ever-increasing list of supplements. So I hope that this webinar will provide you with the possible alternative treatment for fatigue-related conditions. As a brief introduction to myself, let me tell you a little bit about me and my research. I first became fascinated with hydrogen during my undergraduate studies at the University of the West of England, and this was in biomedical science. The thing that really got me was that the simplicity of this small and abundant element actually belies its incredible potential for therapeutic applications. I was drawn to the emerging evidence of hydrogen's antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, particularly its potential to improve outcomes in chronic diseases, including arthritis, COVID, metabolic disorders. And this intersection of biochemistry, health, and innovation inspired me to look deeper into its mechanisms and applications. And today, I'm driven by the possibility of translating this research into tangible benefits for human health. I have in the region of 30 academic publications and have written a book about hydrogen biochemistry. But I'm most passionate about inspiring others to explore the fascinating intersections between science and health, which is what brings me here today. So today's objectives are to understand the differences and similarities between fatigue, post-viral syndrome, and mitochondrial deficiencies, to introduce you to some of the relevant hydrogen and OxyHydrogen research so we can weigh the evidence of using OxyHydrogen therapies in clinical practice. And lastly, we're going to discuss some of the safety principles surrounding OxyHydrogen therapies. First of all, we should define what is meant by clinical fatigue. Clinical fatigue is a condition that extends beyond just tiredness. It describes an extreme lack of energy that impacts daily living. Fatigue can occur due to simple factors such as overexertion or disturbed sleeping. Fatigue can also be a result of more complex interactions, however, such as medications, emotional stress, or recovery from illness. Typically, there are three main reasons for long-term fatigue: physical, mental, and emotional. Physical fatigue refers to the decline in the body's ability to perform tasks that require physical effort. This can be due to prolonged exercise, physical labour, or even chronic health conditions. When patients are physically fatigued, their muscles lose the ability to contract efficiently, resulting in stiffness and weakness, reduced endurance and stamina, and also slower reaction times. This can reduce both dexterity and mobility, impacting a patient's ability to work or to complete daily tasks. Mental and emotional fatigue, on the other hand, is characterized by a decrease in cognitive function. Clinically, this might manifest as difficulty concentrating, memory lapses, and a general sense of being overwhelmed or drained. Mental or emotional fatigue is often caused by prolonged periods of cognitive activity, such as studying, problem solving, or multitasking, and is exacerbated by stress and inadequate sleep. Collectively, this impairs how we process information, affecting both our task-related performances and our emotions. Post-viral syndrome, also referred to as MECFS, is a complex condition involving prolonged bouts of physical, cognitive, emotional, and neurological difficulties. Patients often report symptoms of heart palpitations, muscular and joint pains, disturbed sleeping patterns, poor concentrations, and headaches that have been occurring for some time. PVS is complex in that it is also a highly individualized disorder, and although the etiology may be different to fatigue, both conditions present with similar symptoms, including cardiovascular distress, cognitive dysfunction, and muscle aches and pains. Moreover, PVS is emerging as a significant consequence of COVID-19, with one study reporting that approximately 35% of outpatients and 87% of hospital patients experience persistent or recurrent symptoms. Post-viral syndrome is not only associated with COVID-19, though, it's also noted during recovery from other infectious diseases such as Epstein-Barr virus and the flu. And this brings me neatly on to mitochondrial deficiencies. Mitochondrial deficiencies are one of the driving factors of fatigue-related conditions. When mitochondria fail to function properly, not only does energy production slow down, but they also produce excessive amounts of reactive oxygen species. Reactive oxygen species, although used in healthy cell signaling, can also have a detrimental effect on tissues. Here, the highly unstable molecules are known to damage membrane stability, disrupt protein function, and cause mutations in the DNA code, the consequence of which is dysfunctional cellular activity, increased stress signaling, and inflammation. Mitochondrial deficiencies can be caused by many factors, including inherent genetic mutations, environmental or physical stressors, or the secondary effects of diseases such as PVS. Since mitochondria are critical for producing the high-energy molecule adenosine triphosphate, their dysfunction can lead to impaired cellular, tissue, and organ functions. This, in turn, impacts our health status and overall well-being. And as with fatigue and PVS, mitochondrial deficiencies may present with an array of symptoms, such as nervous system dysfunction, cardiovascular issues, and muscle weakness or stiffness. We've seen that these conditions present with very similar symptomology, but what actually is going on? Pathologically, the two most common underlying factors and potential root causes of mitochondrial dysfunction are oxidative stress and excessive or chronic inflammatory responses. As mentioned before, oxidative stress can be detrimental to cells, tissues, and organs, affecting the way we think, our emotions, and our physical abilities. Inflammation, on the other hand, is a response to cellular stress that engages the immune system. Heightened production of pro-inflammatory molecules such as interleukins, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and necrosis factor kappa beta, all of which combined orchestrate immune responses that result in heat, redness, pain, swelling, and potentially loss of function in affected areas. Oxidative stress and inflammation are interlinked, and when prolonged or uncontrolled, they contribute significantly to the pathology of many clinical conditions. These can include Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and cardiovascular and neurological disorders. And what are the consequences of these underlying factors? Initially, there can be cellular and neuronal damage caused by an accumulation of reactive oxygen species, a heightened immune response, and dysfunctional energy dynamics. This often presents as tiredness as the body tries to preserve its energy resources. Depleted energy resources also increase recovery times as the cells and body quite literally don't have the power they need to make repairs. So now we've explored the issue of fatigue-related disorders, I'd like to tell you a bit about OxyHydrogen and how we, as research scientists, currently think it can benefit people with fatigue-related disorders. Firstly, without getting into too much complicated chemistry, let me explain how oxyhydrogen gas is generated. Simply, oxyhydrogen is produced by the electrolysis of water, which is a sustainable technology that uses an electrical current and a catalyst to decompose water molecules into their constituent gases, which are delivered as 1 part molecular oxygen, O2, and 2 parts molecular hydrogen, H2. Now we know that oxyhydrogen gas is a combination of both oxygen and hydrogen delivered from water molecules. Let's briefly review the roles of these individual gases in the body. Oxygen, we know, sustains life. Its most vital role in the body is to help make energy in cells. The batteries of our cells, the mitochondria, need oxygen at the end of the energy-making process termed oxidative phosphorylation, shown here as well. Without adequate oxygen, the electron donation process backs up and electrons are able to escape and form reactive oxygen or nitrogen species. Without the correct function of the electron transport chain, shown here, the mitochondria is unable to produce ATP. So to put it simply, if the electrons can't be transferred to oxygen in the right part of the chain, our bodies cannot produce the energy we require for the maintenance of our cells. And, unsurprisingly, this can lead to cellular stress and wider fatigue. However, we must be careful when considering increasing our oxygen intake. Whilst mildly elevating levels of oxygen breathed in can provide cells with the essential substrate they need to function, excessive levels may be detrimental to both cellular and holistic health through the increase of reactive oxygen species. For this reason, it is advised that patients are well monitored when undergoing oxyhydrogen therapies. And what do we know about hydrogen? The first study to propose the selective antioxidant activity of hydrogen was published back in 2007, when scientists in Japan noticed reduced oxidative stress in a model of ischemia reperfusion injury. Although the precise mechanisms remain unclear at the moment, it is thought that iron lowers the dissociation energy of the hydrogen molecule, meaning that an electron is able to leave the bound molecule and reduce harmful reactive oxygen species. In the case of the hydroxyl radical, the end product of this reaction is water. But what does this mean for patients? Well, unlike conventional antioxidants such as vitamin C or vitamin E, hydrogen is able to penetrate cellular membranes and reduce reactive oxygen species at the source of production, typically the mitochondria. And this can mitigate the need for increased stress responses such as inflammation. But it's not only in the mitochondria where we see a positive effect of hydrogen. As hydrogen is able to travel through membranes by passive diffusion, its effects can also be seen in the nucleus, where hydrogen has been noted to protect DNA from oxidative damage, enhance DNA repair mechanisms, and increase the expression of cytoprotective compounds such as antioxidants. In the cytosol, the liquid compartment of the cell, hydrogen is noted to influence cell signaling cascades that regulate inflammation, apoptosis, and oxidative stress. This means that hydrogen therapies can be used to assist in recovery from fatigue and other oxidative stress and inflammation-related conditions, which may include allergies, mobility issues, metabolic, neurological, or respiratory conditions. So circling back, what does this mean for cellular health and mitochondrial fitness? Hydrogen therapies are demonstrated to increase the integrity of membranes, protect cells from oxidative damage, influence gene transcription and cell signaling, which in turn reduces stress on the mitochondria, and ATP can be produced more effectively, giving us more energy. And more than this, though, hydrogen can also increase mitochondrial biogenesis, which gives us more mitochondria to produce more energy. Cool, eh? So how does this all relate to the wider body systems? Empirical studies show that hydrogen therapies may reduce mast cell activation, which could benefit people with allergies or mast cell activation syndrome. The anti-inflammatory nature of hydrogen is demonstrated to moderate the infiltration of neutrophils and monocytes and attenuate hyperinflammatory responses. Hydrogen also modulates the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines and chemokines, as mentioned before, TNF-alpha, NF-kappa B, interleukins, and so on. And all of these combined effects can result in providing an environment that favours cellular repair, tissue stability, and organ functionality. So how can we apply OxyHydrogen therapies? Clinically, there are two primary ways to administer oxyhydrogen gas: through inhalation and through dissolving oxyhydrogen into beverages, typically water. So what are the differences between these administration methods? Firstly, although comparative research in this area is sparse, the different routes of administration are likely to affect different systems. For instance, most research identifies that inhalation therapies preferentially target the lungs, heart, brain, and musculature, while consuming hydrogen-rich water can primarily affect the gastrointestinal tract and supporting organs, including the liver and kidneys. Another important distinction to make here is that inhalation provides a higher concentration of both oxygen and hydrogen gases than when they're dissolved in water. For example, a device that produces oxyhydrogen at the rate of 450 mils a minute will deliver approximately 750 parts per million of hydrogen each minute. Whereas if hydrogen is dissolved into water with the saturation of 0.7 parts per million, which is a moderate dose, we can see that inhalation can deliver around 1,000 times more hydrogen into the body. Interestingly, due to the higher density and lower concentration of oxygen in the therapy, inhalation delivers in the region of 100 times more oxygen than drinking the infused water. So what does this mean for your patients, particularly those who are experiencing fatigue and fatigue-related conditions? Well, the research is still in its early stages, so let's weigh the evidence from the clinical studies available. Excuse me. For fatigue, early research conducted in Japan involving 26 healthy adults and using self-reported patient data showed that 300 millilitres of hydrogen-rich water twice a day for 4 weeks could promote better sleep, reduce feelings of fatigue, and improve motivational responses. However, in 2022, a similar study involving people diagnosed with chronic fatigue could not corroborate these findings. However, the authors did conclude that the dosage reduction might benefit any future trial for hydrogen therapies in this illness. So to break this down, it is unclear as to whether hydrogen-rich water is effective in combating the symptoms of long-term fatigue. It may actually depend on providing a low dose of dissolved hydrogen, in the region of something like 0.5 milligrams per litre of hydrogen in 1 litre a day of hydrogen-rich water. And this is the minimal therapeutic value suggested by both the Molecular Hydrogen Institute and the International Hydrogen Standards Association. But when considering oxyhydrogen inhalation, recent cases have shown that inhalation of 6 to 7% hydrogen gas for 3 weeks can reduce occurrences of headaches, sleep disturbances, and clouded cognition. This is also followed up by a larger study of 100 people, which identified that inhaling oxyhydrogen gas for 20 minutes before bedtime and again in the morning could accelerate the recovery of both muscle strength and force, suggesting, as we saw a couple of slides ago, that inhalation may better benefit patients that have mobility or dexterity issues associated with fatigue. Now we've taken a quick look at how hydrogen therapies act in the wide context of fatigue, let's address some of the individual symptoms you may experience in the clinic and start by trying to answer the question, what does the clinical research have to say about hydrogen's effect on the cardiovascular system? The first study here, shown by Derigina and colleagues, included 20 people who had pulmonary bypass surgery and identified that administering 2% of hydrogen gas through inhalation during anesthesia could support the functional state of red blood cells by improving their mobility and metabolism and reducing their aggregation during the postoperative period. The second, slightly larger study shown here of 60 participants with hypertension showed that oxyhydrogen inhalation could significantly lower systolic blood pressure, a factor that was more pronounced in older participants. Interestingly, the study notes that the angiotensin II, aldosterone and cortisol levels, as well as the aldosterone to renin ratio, were significantly lower in the oxyhydrogen inhalation group. This may be important as it shows that hydrogen can modulate stress hormone levels, which often have a role in numerous clinical conditions. And the last report shown here is with patients with post-COVID syndrome, where inhalation of hydrogen along with nitric oxide was shown to increase the distance walked in the 6-minute walking test, improve blood flow, and reduce oxidative damage associated with exertion. So let's put this in context of your clinic. You have a client who's felt run down for a few months now. They feel exhausted after small exertions, let's say walking the dog for a few miles, and they may present with high blood pressure or describe that their heart races. This may be a time to consider whether oxyhydrogen therapies would be suitable for your client. Fatigue-related conditions are also known to impact respiratory function, whilst inflammation in the respiratory tract can impair oxygen exchange. With this in mind, a study of 20 people with asthma COPD noted that a single 45-minute inhalation of 2.4% hydrogen gas in air reduced inflammatory markers. Whilst a second study supporting the findings of the Pozniakova study we saw on the last slide, further research the effects of hydrogen therapies for promoting recovery from COVID-19 and showed that 2 hours of inhalation each day for 14 days could increase the distance of the 6-minute walking test and improve both forced vital capacity and expiratory volume, indicative of increased lung capacity and function. And lastly here, a study involving 108 people identified that OxyHydrogen therapies were superior to oxygen-only therapies for treating acute exacerbations of COPD. The authors report significant reductions in the cough sputum assessment and gradual improvement in overall symptoms. Interestingly, there were also 10% less adverse events recorded in the oxygen-hydrogen group than with the oxygen group, suggesting that in this context, hydrogen may have a key role in the management of inflammatory lung conditions. But again, what might this look like in the clinic? Initially, someone may have trouble walking a flight of stairs, perhaps they're a little breathless or mention that they're wheezing afterwards. This is where you could consider trialling oxyhydrogen inhalation in particular, due to its direct delivery into the pulmonary system. Regarding neurological fatigue, research conducted by a proactive group of scientists in Serbia tested the effect of hydrogen-rich water against caffeine for boosting alertness in a small group of sleep-deprived students. The data the group retrieved showed that a single 500 milliliter glass of hydrogen-rich water containing a moderate dose of 0.8 milligrams per liter could improve task performance as well as caffeine does. The study further identified that substances, caffeine and hydrogen-rich water, increased the choline-creatine ratio in several brain regions. This may be an important finding as a balanced ratio indicates normal cellular energy metabolism and membrane stability, creatine having a central role in energy metabolism, and choline being both a precursor for the neurotransmitter acetylcholine and a marker of membrane stability. Now, when thinking about sleep quality, several independent studies have shown that hydrogen therapies can improve sleep. For example, a recent study demonstrated that 14-day consumption of hydrogen-rich water containing a very low dose below the therapeutic level of 0.5 milligrams per litre was still effective for improving cardiorespiratory, musculoskeletal and neurological function. These findings are further supported by research where drinking 600 ml of hydrogen-rich water, again containing that moderate amount of 0.8 milligrams per litre. So drinking 600 ml for 21 days was shown to reduce the severity of fatigue syndrome, improve mood and performance, and increase in tension in 45 volunteer students. Clinically, this suggests that clients presenting with cognitive dysfunction, brain fog, tiredness, or emotional imbalance may well benefit from hydrogen-rich water and oxyhydrogen therapies. When it comes to physical fatigue, oxyhydrogen gas is demonstrated to reduce oxidative stress after physical exertion. Numerous studies have identified that inhalation can reduce biological markers of oxidative stress. For example, a Japanese study of 8 males undertaking eccentric exercise identified that inhaling oxyhydrogen gas for 1 hour during the recovery period attenuated the increase of 8-oxo-DG, a marker of DNA oxidation. Whilst other studies have identified that both inhalation and hydrogen-rich water can suppress the reduction in circulating antioxidants caused by overexertion. Now, one study, amongst many that have been conducted by the highly active research group in the Czech Republic, noted that a single dose of 1.25 litres of hydrogen-rich water could reduce blood lactate levels and reduce muscle soreness. Lactate is synonymous with the switch from aerobic respiration, the mechanism we spoke about earlier where the mitochondria produce ATP, to anaerobic respiration, where ATP is derived from glycolysis, a less efficient process that produces lactate as an end product. Lactate is a key driver of muscle soreness and cramps. So by preventing lactate accumulation and promoting aerobic respiration, it seems that hydrogen therapies can support muscle recovery through enhancing and supporting mitochondrial function. So again, what might this look like in the clinic? Individuals with chronic conditions characterized by muscle fatigue, such as fibromyalgia, COVID-19, or chronic fatigue syndrome, could experience improved energy and reduced muscle discomfort. This could significantly improve their quality of life and ability to perform daily tasks. Additionally, for athletes or patients undergoing physical training, regular use of hydrogen therapies could enhance muscle power, promote mitochondrial efficiency, and improve endurance by supporting aerobic respiration and reducing the reliance on glycolysis. Clinically, this could be seen as better performance in strength or endurance tests and reduced injury risk. And so to briefly recap, what does all this mean for people with fatigue, post-viral syndrome, or mitochondrial deficiencies? By targeting mitochondrial efficiency, OxyHydrogen therapies may protect the mitochondria from oxidative stress and boost ATP production. This can help to support cellular recovery and moderate systemic immune responses, leading overall to improved symptomology. So in these sections, I've mainly focused on the known effects of hydrogen therapies for the symptoms associated with fatigue. But what does the research say for other conditions? Working here from the top down, we can see that there are potentially numerous conditions for which oxyhydrogen inhalation or hydrogen-rich water can provide relief. And these include allergies, alcohol detoxification, metabolic conditions, as well as the fatigue-related symptoms we've been talking about. Perhaps more important than just reporting the positive effects of these therapies are the potential negative or side effects of treatments. So what do we know? Initially, hydrogen has a good safety profile and is categorized as generally regarded as safe by the US, EU, and UK Food Standards Associations, indicating that it is safe for human consumption. But what does the specific clinical research say? Here we can see through various clinical trial data, which are bound to report adverse events, that negative effects can include detox-like symptoms, including headaches, nausea, gastrointestinal discomfort, and very rarely nosebleeds. However, all of these symptoms have been very quickly resolved without the need for other interventions, and it can be said that in most cases, the safety profile of oxyhydrogen therapies is considered as favourable. However, another pressing question I can almost hear you guys asking is, are there any contraindications of oxyhydrogen therapy? Here, I must reiterate that despite there being a growing body of clinical research showing the benefits of oxyhydrogen therapies, to date there is still not enough evidence to have all the answers for all of the conditions that you may see in the clinic. This being said, there are a few important things that we do know, and caution should be applied when considering clients who may have certain conditions. Of particular note is type 1 diabetes. Something I've not mentioned in this presentation is that hydrogen is extremely effective in improving insulin sensitivity and thereby enhancing glucose uptake in cells. For type 1 diabetics, this can mean that their insulin is more effective, which could in some cases lead to hypoglycemia. For this reason, it's extremely important that if you feel oxyhydrogen therapies could benefit a type 1 diabetic, close monitoring of their blood sugar and insulin levels will be paramount in their care. The next area to apply caution would be for people with long-term or severe respiratory complications. Although current research shows hydrogen therapies to be largely beneficial for respiratory conditions, its overuse could counteract the benefits. In such cases where you think a client could benefit from OxyHydrogen inhalation, close monitoring of the patient's condition is again advised. Another clinical aspect to consider is pregnancy. As yet, there is no research or risk-benefit analysis having been conducted regarding the safety and efficacy of hydrogen therapies during pregnancy, and the long-term implications of these therapies on mother and child are just simply unknown. So lastly, as previously mentioned, these minor adverse effects, similar to detox symptoms, can also be experienced when using hydrogen therapies. Headaches, dizziness, nausea, gastrointestinal issues are the most commonly reported. However, discontinuation or a titration down of treatment may resolve these issues. For inhalation, that could mean going from hour-long sessions to half-hour sessions, or daily treatments to bi-weekly sessions. And for hydrogen-rich water, it would simply mean decreasing the volume of water consumed. Now, what about safety? Although I cannot advise on dosages or durations at this time due to the random aspects of the current clinical data, there are a few things you should be looking for in a device. Firstly, you want to see a safety certification such as the CE mark. Here on the right, we can see a few variations on the mark. The first two show the European Health, Safety and Environmental Responsibility Standard, whereas the last mark shows a Chinese copy. And this is usually a sign that the device has not been certified to European standards. And in my experience, if the manufacturers have gone to the trouble to falsify or mislead consumers with this mark, it's probably best avoided. So it's quite hard to see here, but there is a clear gap between the European one and a very small gap in the Chinese one. This might be hard to delineate, but it's worth taking that time to make sure. So the next set of safety pointers refer to safety using OxyHydrogen devices. The two images in the top right both refer to the ignition of OxyHydrogen or hydrogen gas. Both gases are highly flammable and combined can create a forceful explosion if ignited. Therefore, it's important to note that smoking, lighting candles, and running the device near sources of ignition is not advised. And as an additional level of safety, using in a well-ventilated space would be very pragmatic. The next piece of safety advice considers the cleaning of the product and its accessories. It's important here not to use harsh chemicals such as bleach for cleaning, as this could lead to the degradation of components such as tubing, which would increase the potential for gas leakage. So no bleach. Our advice is to use soap and water and to rinse well and dry well. The next piece of safety advice considers cleaning. I've done that bit. I do apologize. So finally, it is also really important not to add anything to either of the water reservoirs. No salts, no essential oils, no lemon juice. And this reminds me, the water used in the reservoirs should also be purified, preferably distilled, as this prevents contaminants both in the reservoirs and on the electrodes, ensuring continuous, safe and effective gas delivery. And so, to summarise, the causes of fatigue can vary wildly and range from poor diet, lack of sunshine, emotional distress and recovery from illness. Although we're unsure as to whether OxyHydrogen can resolve the root causes of fatigue-related conditions, the evidence shows that hydrogen therapies can be very effective for mitigating oxidative stress and inflammation, thereby supporting the body's natural healing processes and improving aspects of day-to-day living. Hopefully today I've covered the objectives to understand the differences and similarities between fatigue, PVS and mitochondrial deficiencies, to describe how OxyHydrogen could benefit people with fatigue-related conditions, and to understand some of the safety aspects of OxyHydrogen therapy. So a massive thank you again to Enzyme Science, Celgenate and Water Fuel Engineering for having me here today. And thank you all for your time, for turning up and being here. Can I take any questions?
Thank you very much, Grace, for the facts. It's great to have the facts when there is so much information out there that creates confusion. And so, more importantly for me, of course, is that here at Hydro Vitality, we as a company are manufacturing our device here in the UK. And one of the things that you've managed to solve in the collaboration between the West of England University and Hydro Vitality is the ability to produce not only oxyhydrogen gas inhalation in one system, but also the ability to produce water too, so people can access both water and inhalation from one simple system. And to be able to use that in clinic as healthcare practitioners is a great bonus for people. But also it's important from our point of view too to have access to factual, good, solid information that's coming from a qualified place like the West of England University and Dr. Russell. So again, Grace, thank you very much for that. I'm sure lots of questions will come on the back of this communication and this presentation today, but our sincere thanks to you for that. I've only yesterday returned from the biggest integrated health hospital in the world in California, having that's been working really hard with over 4 million patients globally, with people suffering all types of problems, but very severe cancers in a lot of cases. And one of the things that the medical teams there that I spoke with were really excited about was the ability to use our system to support their patients in a faster recovery and a faster detoxification from the disease states that they're suffering. So that's a major breakthrough for us. But also in European hospitals, they're now starting to use our system as frontline for everyone that comes into A&E, which is great. There's a lot more studies being done, factual studies being done right, or physical studies being done right at this moment in time, which we'll be able to relate to all of the practitioners that are on this call and those that see the recording later. But also what's important for us is that we are able to provide certified education and training for healthcare practitioners, because we believe at Hydro Vitality, we need to educate and certificate all of our practitioners so that information is coming from a qualified source to be able to be proficient and produce really good results in clinic with your own patients. So that's a paramount importance for us. In an unregulated environment, we feel that it's really important to establish a benchmark and standard, and that's what Hydro Vitality and the West of England University are doing. So as a forefront leader in the world of this right now, I'm really excited to be doing this with you, Dr. Russell, and thank you a great deal for your time today. So, Alexander, I can see questions are ratcheting up in the Q&A. So if you'd like to go through any of those, that'd be really great. Thank you.
Yeah, we can start from the beginning. Hi, everyone. So the first one is, for patients with low bioquality and quantity and detoxification issues due to chronic liver diseases, I assume OxyHydrogen can mobilize toxins quite rapidly. So would you suggest a cautious dosage? Start slow and work up.
Hi, yeah, great question. There is quite a bit of research showing the effect of hydrogen therapies in the liver. They've all been really quite favourable. It's thought also that the liver may store some hydrogen in the glycogen complexes there. So the liver is a really good target. As for therapy recommendations, hydrogen-rich water would be a good place to start. And if your client is feeling better with hydrogen-rich water, that low dose of 0.5 milligrams per litre is what you're hoping to achieve as a minimum effect, and 1 litre a day. But you can also then move on to OxyHydrogen inhalation therapies, and it may be worthwhile to start off quite low. So maybe half an hour twice a week, monitor 3 to 4 weeks, and reassess and see how you and the client are with the treatments.
All right, the next one. In the case of recovery from glandular fever in a teenager, is there a preferred method of therapy, water, inhalation?
Okay, another great question. Glandular fever is caused by that Epstein-Barr virus. It's very common over here. In fact, it's common around the world, with over 90% of people having been infected with Epstein-Barr. I can't give you clinical guidelines on how to treat certain infections. The research just simply isn't out there. But I think with something like EBV, it may be worth starting off with the water, or with slightly shorter inhalation sessions. Certainly if you're thinking about teenagers as well. There's only a couple of reports that have been done on teenage populations, hydrogen-rich water, both studies, and they've been well tolerated. So I think that might be an avenue, but if they get really, really poorly, you can consider the inhalation.
All right, the next one. Would this help someone who might be suffering from toxicity to mold?
Toxicity from mold?
Yeah, toxicity to mold.
Actually, there's no research at all. I'm really quite reluctant to be able to advise on this at all. Again, simple safety precautions, perhaps start with the water, monitor the condition for a week, and increase the water if you like. If there's any negative reactions at all, cease treatment. And yeah, there's nothing out there for mold, I'm afraid.
All right, the next one. Physical recovery after cancer treatment. Would appreciate any input. Thank you.
Okay, there's quite a lot of evidence for this. And in nearly every case that's been reported, recovery from cancer and chemotherapy is really elevated with OxyHydrogen inhalation. It can help people with their appetite, it can help people with their mobility, and it can actually just foster a sense of well-being and positivity. And this is because of the action that we spoke about that happens in the brain. It balances the creatine and choline, and it actually has a good effect on not just your physical health, but your mental health as well.
Okay, the next one. Are there recommendations for concomitant vitamin supplementation with OxyHydrogen therapy, or is it effective used alone?
Okay, really good question. And there's some brand new research in this area, where actually drinking hydrogen-rich water with a plant-based meal can actually potentially help to extract some of those nutrients much quicker. As I said, it's a really new study. It only came out about a week ago. But it's really promising. I've done a lot of work as well with hydrogen and food, actually using it as a food additive. And again, those antioxidant effects are really powerful, and the antimicrobial effects are really powerful. So I would recommend drinking hydrogen-rich water with a meal, or potentially having your meal and then going on the inhalation device.
Next one, please say something about the side effects of the COVID-19 vaccines and OxyHydrogen.
Okay, so I was quite possibly one of the first people to publish regarding COVID-19 itself and hydrogen and oxyhydrogen treatments, in which case they were really effective for reducing chest pain. I'm not sure I can really be qualified to comment on the vaccines, but as with the post-viral syndrome, if somebody is feeling that poorly after COVID or the vaccine, then oxyhydrogen therapies have a really good profile for being able to build that resilience, improve mobility, improve the mental state and cognitive function, and also to reduce potential heart palpitations and hypertension associated with these sort of diseases.
Next one, how this type of therapy would impact the gut microbiome, specifically commensal and pathogens. I knew you would get excited
I
for this
love
one.
this. This is quite possibly my favorite area. So there is a lot of research, and as I mentioned in the presentation there, hydrogen-rich water can be one of the most effective ways. It does help to balance that gut microbiota. There's reports suggesting an increase in butyrate producing bacteria. Now, we all know that butyrate is a magic little chemical that helps to fix gut leaks, that helps to keep the balance of the environment just right so that the pathogens can't establish themselves. Inhalation, there's new research now showing that inhalation does a very similar thing. So overall, encompassing is really good for balancing that gut microbiome. It can slow down transit times as well. It can slow down or increase transit time. So if you've got somebody that's a little bunged up, then hydrogen inhalation can work. But also if you've got somebody that can't stop going to the toilet, hydrogen can also help to relieve that as well. So it has a massive effect on that great microbiome that we're all looking for.
The next one, how can you take it to support mast cell activation, histamine intolerance, and inflammation?
Okay, great. The research in this area is primarily laboratory research at the moment, but there are quite a few studies out there that show that hydrogen can reduce histamine release and mast cell activation. So when we're talking allergies and inflammation and that sort of thing, the hydrogen inhalation, I think, would be quite proper for these conditions, can actually reduce all of that hyper-inflammatory responses, the allergies, and activation and release of histamine.
Next one, can oxyhydrogen help better insulin resistance, and does it have any side effects?
Okay, so we're talking type 2 diabetes here with insulin resistance. And I did briefly touch on that in the contraindication section. Hydrogen has had some really wonderful effects on metabolic syndrome, let's call it. So it can reduce those glycosylated red blood cells, and it does that by increasing insulin sensitivity and improving glucose usage and uptake in cells. It can also modify lipid profiles as well, so reducing the risk of atherosclerosis, hypertension. They're really, really favorable metabolic effects.
Next one, Is there any contraindication when dissolving H2 in hot water?
In hot water, simply because heat agitates molecules and makes them move faster. We don't recommend putting hydrogen in hot water because hydrogen is so light anyway, it will escape. When you consume hydrogen-rich water made with hydrovitality, the advice is to drink it within 15 minutes because that hydrogen dissipates. Now, if you were to put that in hot water, the hydrogen is going to dissipate a lot quicker. So you would essentially be having to drink something that is possibly too hot for the mouth.
Right, the next one. If someone is taking charcoal or zeolite for detoxification purposes, is there an interaction with hydrogen, water, oxyhydrogen?
Again, the research has not been done, but as a stable compound, adverse reactions are highly unlikely.
Good. Next one. Is there any research around its use in people with Lyme disease?
No specific research that I've come across. However, treating the affected area where the tick bite would be quite a good idea to do. So you would make hydrogen-rich water, bathe the site of where the tick bite would be. If it's a tick bite that's happened a long time ago, then OxyHydrogen inhalation can help to support those cellular activities that are needed for fighting the response to many diseases. And again, I'd be really interested to see if you are able to treat any of your clients that way.
And then we have 3 questions for SIBO. So for clients with SIBO, can hydrogen-rich water exacerbate hydrogen SIBO symptoms? How much is absorbed systematically versus passing through the gut? And then another one for gut effects. And then another one for gut effects. So 3 for gut effects, yeah.
Okay, so again, this sort of feeds back into that digestive health area and the microbiome we spoke about earlier. SIBO is a really strange kind of condition because logically speaking, hydrogen shouldn't help. There are a lot of hydrogenotrophs that can collect in SIBO, and theoretically it shouldn't help because it should be feeding the bacteria. That's not actually what we find happens in the gut. What we find happens is that the hydrogen actually helps to repair the leaky gut, and it also helps to increase colon transit time in such cases. So in SIBO is caused by an overgrowth of bacteria because there's more waste around than should be around. So what hydrogen does is it supports the gut, clears that waste, and is able to reduce SIBO. We think, again, there is no specific clinical study on this. It's just applying the knowledge that I have for a condition that hasn't been investigated yet. So by speeding up colonic transit time, by reducing leaky gut and permeability, and by feeding the good bacteria that we all want in our microbiome, we think that hydrogen could be effective for SIBO, but I would definitely advise closely monitoring your clients in the sort of first month or 2.
And then the next one, how would you compare the oxyhydrogen inhalation to those hydrogen water jars that you can buy from everywhere?
Okay, that's great. I think from my experience and knowing the marketplace as I do, I'm not entirely convinced about these portable water products. The technology they use isn't very sustainable, which is why they can do these things so cheaply. But also the hydrogen content for many of them, just they'll tell you it's 2 parts per million, but we don't know how long that lasts. So that could on day 1 give you 2 parts per million, but on day 12 you could already be down to nearly no hydrogen at all. So you would have to constantly monitor the hydrogen produced by these devices. Inhalation, as we said earlier, gives you about 1,000 times more hydrogen. So you're getting more saturation of hydrogen through that way. Devices like the Hydro Vitality device can give you 2 options. They can give you the inhalation option and the infusion option. They also have the benefit that they are sustainably made, without the potential of leaching of certain aspects into the water, which is another worry with these water bottles. I do fear that because the tidal wave of hydrogen therapy is taking off, that a lot of companies have come in to do something cheap, easy, quick, and it wouldn't be my favoured way of taking hydrogen for any time at all.
So then following on, how do we monitor the hydrogen content?
Okay, great. So there are a few products on the market, and you can get a little bottle of what's called H2 Blue. And it's a titration system. So it has methylene blue and colloidal platinum, which adheres and reacts with the hydrogen. And it's quite a simple method, 1 drop, and then you wait for the water to clear, and then you add another drop and you wait for the water to clear. And once the water doesn't clear anymore, then the drops tell you how many parts per million you have in the water. So it comes with full instructions from the manufacturer. There are YouTube videos on how to use it as well, in case you're unsure at all. That would be the sort of client method to assess how much is in there. If you wanted the gold standard, that would be gas chromatography, which is very, very expensive.
Next one, is spring water hydrogen rich?
Now that depends. I've actually got a contact in Poland who's traveling around springs and lakes, and he's measuring, and he is finding some with hydrogen in, but it's not a typical mineral that you would find. You do need to infuse that because hydrogen escapes, and if you've got an open body of water, that is just going to go straight into the atmosphere. So it would be pragmatic to always infuse your hydrogen into the water.
Next one, how can OxyHydrogen support perimenopause and menopause? What is best, hydrogen-rich water or inhalations or a combination of the 2?
Okay, fabulous. There's not a lot of research in this area. One that springs to mind is on weight, where obviously perimenopausal, menopausal women tend to put on weight at this time in life. So it can help with your lipid profiles, your sugar profiles. It can also help incredibly with your sense of well-being, skin conditions, for example. Dry skin is quite well reported, again, during this time in a woman's life. So it supports on many, many levels, primarily through reducing that oxidative stress, reducing excessive inflammation, improving collagen, improving energy. And that, once you start to sort of take that on board for a couple of months, then you start to find that perhaps some of your perimenopausal symptoms are abating, or you're just starting to feel a bit better and you can cope with some of the changes that are happening. There's lots of things on hormone control, but no concerted efforts or clinical data to be able to support these findings at the moment.
Next one. Copper changes the energetics of water. If someone is using tools that change the structure, would taking hydrogen water have any interactions, good or bad?
I'm not sure what's
I'm
meant
not
by
sure
changing the structure of water.
I'm not sure about
Maybe email me that one and I can have a little look.
Grace, I think it's referring to, you know, sometimes you have these things that you can put in water. So, for example, you might get a bit of hydrogen at the bottom, or maybe charcoal or some other metal. So, if you combine hydrogen with any other metal in water, would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, I see. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I would say I think it's probably best not to combine your hydrogen-rich water with anything, just because you risk losing that hydrogen even quicker. And like I say, it's really hard to keep it in a glass of water, a bottle of water, that sort of thing. So just to make sure that the hydrogen you're getting is what you need, then I would just drink the hydrogen water and not add anything else to it.
Next one. Would taking hydrogen water interact with any metal in the mouth?
As in sort of fillings and things, it doesn't affect, no. Typically hydrogen, the H2, the hydrogen molecule, is pretty unreactive. It doesn't like to get in the way of things, and it takes something to really lower the bond energy before hydrogen is able to be active in the way that we know it.
Where can you obtain the hydrogen blue for the monitor?
Type in H2 blue into Amazon. That's how I get mine.
We're currently out of questions.
Yeah, I think that brings us to the end of the questions, which is fascinating, Grace, to have you answering those live. It's really great information. I think as more and more people become aware of hydrogen and its uses, it's so valuable to have an educated, factual response, you know, and a good education system that we can offer all of the practitioners that are on this call to become certified in through what you've created. So we're very grateful for you coming today. And I know that was a really big challenge for you today, but I have to say you did fabulously well, Grace. So we're really pleased, and thank you very much. So following on from this call today, this has been recorded and a transcription will be created from it, as well as the video being created. So it will be sent out to everyone who's been on this call today, along with information about where you can get further information about these brochures, or attend demonstrations where we will be putting them on live with Enzyme Science support, and also information on where you can access these machines, or indeed if you want a demonstration on how to use these machines, you'll see them in action. A number of naturopathic practitioners in the country are now using them in practice very well, and really enjoying the benefits that it's helping them with in their practices, not only from a client profile perspective in terms of increased benefits to their patients, but as importantly, a financial package that allows their patients to come into the clinic and use the machines in clinic, rather than having to take it home if they don't want to do that, although they can access the machines if they want. We have created a finance package available to practitioners to be able to access these machines if they want them, and far more information if you need that. And I'm very pleased to have done this today. It's the first one we've ever done, but someone has to create a standard in this unregulated environment, because it's important that it's in the hands of well-educated healthcare practitioners to get out to patients and do the best we can for people who are in desperate need. There was a question that came up about the effects of this hydrovitality system on patients that have had the MMR jabs and COVID recovery. And that's one of the things I was doing out in the hospital in California, seeing tremendous results with patients that were coming through there with some really, really severe states. So it's a very exciting time. I'm very pleased to be associated with enzyme science, cell-genate, hydrovitality, to bring you the very best of what there is and created right here in Britain. So thank you for attending today, and I look forward to communicating with each and every one of you that choose to do so. Contact details will be sent out to you, so that should you want anything, please feel free to ask, and we'll do whatever we can to support you. Thank you very much for your time today, and that is the end of this recording. Bye-bye now.